Yeah, people, when things like this happen, that you get these two very, very powerful business partners who just so happened to have won a case, very rarely actually, to win a case in the US in one of these fraud trials. They were accused of defrauding Hewlett Packard of, I think, about $8 billion. And this was going on for a few years. Mike Lynch was extradited to the US and was sitting there waiting for trial for a long time, and then eventually they get found not guilty, and then just within the space of 3 months, both of the guys die in separate countries in very strange accidents. I can't remember the name of the colleague, but Mike Lynch died as a result of the sinking of his yacht, which is called the Bayesian, and the other chap died as a result of he was hit on a quiet road in Cambridgeshire riding his bike, and they actually died on the same day. The accidents didn't happen on the same day, but their deaths were said to be on exactly the same day. And so people say, well, there's too much of a coincidence for this to happen. And what we do in these circumstances point out actually that weird coincidences happen all the time, right? Because just the probability that those two particular guys would have died on that particular day after this particular trial is, of course, infinitesimally small. But infinitesimally small coincidences happen all the time. The probability of a particular guy winning let's say the first jackpot lottery that was held in the UK is, of course, 1 in 14 million. But actually, several people won the lottery the first time that day. And in fact, it's almost inevitable that someone would have won the lottery the first time they ever played it. So what you have to take account of is all of the other. It's not just these two businessmen. If it would happen to any other two linked businessmen, and not just on that day, but over a very long period, then you see actually this isn't so unlikely that it would happen. And once you take account of all of that, not assuming the thing about the trial, because that's a bit interesting, then it turns out the probability that something like that would happen to two closely related businesses, they would die on the same day, sometime within within a 10-year period, you'd see that happen. It's actually it's not infinitesimally small. I think we worked it out about 2%. Once you take account of the other evidence in the case, then it does become indeed more unlikely. So the conclusion is that
this is why I wanted to talk about this. Yeah, this is why I wanted to talk about this, Norman, because these models and the analysis you can do is great, isn't it? But there are limitations, aren't they? Particularly, because I guess at the end of the day, this isn't a probability. It either was a coincidence or it wasn't. And if it wasn't, you can still run the probabilities and say, well, what were the probabilities of this happening to other people like this? But of course, you've got other things as well, which I guess you can't factor into the model. Like, for example, the fact that this was a round the world boat that the manufacturer even said is unsinkable. I mean, for me, I've done a bit of sailing.
Practically unsinkable. Yeah.
And the fact that the business that these two gentlemen were in was linked to the security forces. Chamberlain, Stephen Chamberlain, his spin-off company, which Mike Lynch was also involved in, they were developing anti-hacking software, which would have made it impossible to hack websites and businesses. Now, that would be an absolute nightmare for agencies like the CIA around the world. They don't want that. So there's a lot of secret squirrel stuff, shall I say, that went on around all of that. So I think when you add it all in, I think, like you said, your analysis shows that these events, I guess if you just take it the basic, two people, colleagues dying on the same day, the fact that they were, that's not that unlikely. But I think, I don't know, I just wanted to get your opinion when you added all these other...
We did the analysis. We did factor in those known, some, not all of them, but some of those known factors, and making completely reasonable assumptions that you do with this type of probabilistic analysis. It did indeed become very unlikely that this just happened by chance. It was like, more like I can't remember exactly what the conclusion was, but it was probably definitely less than 1 in 1,000.
I mean, the fact that there were other boats there were other boats around that boat that were fine as well. And this was a a champion of boats in terms of its ability to withstand. So I think.
And wasn't there was a news story came out, I think yesterday, about the fact that, because people were asking how comes it was only Mike Lynch and his accountant or his lawyer who was also on the case, and their families, how comes there was only 7 people out of the 21 on board who actually died, and it was basically Mike Lynch and those people, and people saying, well, how comes everybody else survived but not them? Now the story I heard is that they were actually in an airlock underneath, which could explain why. But then why weren't they rescued? I don't know.
Well, the autopsy showed that they didn't drown. They didn't have water in their lungs. They died of asphyxiation. So that again, to me, I mean, I would think that if you were at the bottom of the ocean, because you would have felt the boat reach the bottom of the ocean, you're going to have a go to try and get away, because it's either that or the fact that you might as well just give up, surely. So the fact that none of them had drowned and even attempted to try and get out of the boat, I don't know. Maybe we'll never know, Norman. But anyway, I thought that was a really interesting bit of analysis that you did. It kind of shows how you can try and put a framework around working out probabilities of real world events, which is really difficult to do. But you did a brilliant job of that.
That's the kind of thing, incidentally, that we do or used to do when it wasn't cancelled in trials, like criminal trials, looking at the impact of forensic evidence and using all this probabilistic analysis, which takes account of multiple factors.
You are about to hear
today's News Talk and the voice of freedom. We're today's News Talk, TNT.